Welcome to the Game Week 33 video. Now this week kicks off with West Ham and Arsenal, and this is a big game for the top 4 race and potentially in the title race as well. Now West Ham, you would have to say, in the last two games, drawn both of them 2-2, and I think they've dropped points in both those games. They were winning positions, and there's no doubt had they got those extra 4 points, they would be much more of a threat than they currently are in terms of really sustaining a top 4 challenge. And you just think dropping points here now at home at Arsenal would just further keep them really away from posing any challenge to Man City and Man United. I think what was really disappointing in the last game with a 2-2 draw against Palace is Coates sending off did turn the game around. West Ham 1-0 down, a bit of a poor mistake by Adrian, but he came back in the game, made it 2-1. Key players like Payet, Lanzini were heavily involved in what West Ham did. But, obviously everyone has seen Payet's free kick, which was sublime, and Lanzini always seems to be in the right place and executes his chances really well. But the sending off did turn it around, and Palace at the end could have easily won the game as well. But West Ham will consider themselves very unfortunate, and this is a big game for them. I think West Ham have done well this whole season, and if they can honestly finish even in the UEFA Cup position, I think that is a success and a good building block to build for, for next season, considering they'll be moving stadium. So I think things are really looking positive for West Ham. And when you compare them against Arsenal, well, Arsenal definitely have seem to have gathered some form since beating Everton and obviously beating Watford. I think the last time they won 4-0, if we don't excuse the FA Cup, it's actually been a really long while since Arsenal have won that convincingly. And it's probably not a coincidence. This result has occurred when really the pressure is off in a weird way. So, or you could say the pressure is really on because, there's also the chance that Arsenal might not even finish in the top 4, considering how Man City and Man United are currently getting results. But an impressive result for Arsenal, considering the fact that Watford did beat them in the same fixture just a few weeks back in the FA Cup. Sanchez looks like he's back in form, and he's definitely the one player you've got to consider, especially with a double week looming. And similarly again, with West Ham, Payet with a double week, like I said, I think he's a player you must have. Now, obviously there are extra players. With Arsenal, there is Ozil. He's kind of dipped in form in terms of his points recently, but I still think just because of what he can do in a single game with his assists and goals, I think he's definitely worth the gamble. And with West Ham, I'd probably look at Lanzini at the moment because I think he's also got the potential of getting assists as well. And obviously you have Antonio there as well at West Ham. Arsenal other players, Iwobi obviously has been a big part of what they're doing really well and the last few weeks. And in terms of the game, I think if Arsenal turn up, especially with no fixtures now except for the Premier League and with this to focus only, I just think that Arsenal probably just have enough. But it depends, if West Ham, it's the early game of the week, if they take an early lead, that will really unsettle Arsenal. So I think the first goal is the most important one, but I'd probably just edge it to Arsenal just because they don't have Champions League fixtures, they've got players coming back, and I think West Ham will be slightly a bit angry at themselves. Had they gone to this game with just 4 points, which they dropped, I think it would have been a different game because then they know very much they're in that race of the top 4. But I think they've left themselves maybe a bit too much to do. In terms of 3 o'clock kickoffs, we've got Villa and Bournemouth. And there's not much to say in regards to Villa. Absolutely humiliated at home by Chelsea, and there's actually nothing to say. Romero obviously got, he left by mutual consent, and I think everyone's just really preparing for next season, the Championship. Who the manager will be next year, that's open for discussion with people who've been mentioned like Powell, there's David Moyes as well, which I've heard, but I think really they need to get things right. I heard something like they spent £2 million on the logo, on the redesign of the logo. Now, I don't know what to say, but had they spent the £2 million maybe with their transfer market and got something better than the players they bought, that would have been money well spent. And had they could have probably just left their logo intact. but things have gone really bad, and I don't really recall any team really that has been so disappointing. It's not necessarily about having the most points. I mean, sorry, the least points in the entire Premier League season. It's just the performances that's been really bad, and there's no sign of fight. And it's disappointing to see because Villa, if you've been following the Premier League for the last 20 years or so, they've always been a big team in the sense that they've always been there around. There have been times, especially under Martin O'Neill, where you felt like Villa could really build on to some really good positions in the Premier League, and maybe one day challenge for top four. There was a point, actually, in fact, where they were sitting in fourth position. I think maybe 8 points ahead of Arsenal. Obviously Wenger does what he does best, and he makes sure his team does finish in top four. But from those heights, Villa have really dropped down. Bournemouth, on the other hand, not so much of a similar story, but they're very much on a slippery slope. They've been losing the games, and Man City lost 4-0 away. At home, and that's surprising. Man City obviously seem to be in better form now, knowing that they've really got to turn up, and top four is not guaranteed for them now as well. But Bournemouth really didn't show much in that game as well, unfortunately. Playing from the back, they got picked out very easily, and once they were 3-0 down in quick succession very early on in the first half, and the game was over. So I think this is probably one of the best games Bournemouth could have. I mean, okay, yeah, they're safe, and the players know that, but I'm sure they want to bounce back and get a good performance. And there's no better place to go to than Villa Park. Probably it's better to verse them at home than away. Away than home, just because of the fact that their fans will be so disgruntled from how the season's gone so far. And in terms of player recommendations from Bournemouth, well, I would look maybe at the defenders. You've got Daniels, you've got a few others. And in terms of midfield and strike, obviously, we've seen players like... I still think Rich is a player that I very much like when it comes from Bournemouth. They've got players like Gradle and etc. So, but will I really consider players from Bournemouth? Probably not, because I don't think they have a double week. In fact, I'm pretty certain they don't. So, yeah, they don't. So, I just think... really, the players you bring in this game week and the next really should be targeting players who've got double game weeks. Palace, for instance, against Norwich. Palace do have a double game week this week, and they also have a double game week next week. Although I should state, the fixtures actually during this game week is pretty bad. It's away at Arsenal and away at Old Trafford, but they are very much kind of involved in this relegation battle, and they will want to perform. And Norwich, on the other hand, if they had a 6-pointer against Newcastle, this is also another 6-pointer because they beat Crystal Palace. They bring Palace right back into the relegation scrap. Players that I recommend from Palace, Balassi was playing a striker player for my team. I think he's worth the gamble. You got Zaha as well. He does look like the type of player that will probably get you a penalty. And then you can consider maybe defenders from Palace, possibly. But considering the fixtures in the next game week, I probably wouldn't resort to that. Although the keeper Hennessy is very cheap. So those are the things I'll look at. And in terms of Palace's last fixture, 2-2 against West Ham, look, they were fortunate to get a situation where they were against 10 men. But they got the point, and I think this is a game where really they've got to perform. Norwich, on the other hand, there was a really entertaining game against Newcastle. To be honest, it swayed from one side to another, and Norwich should get the winner at the end. And Ambakani and Naismith, those are the players that I will look at. Although, Naismith didn't get really any points, but I still think offensively he does offer a threat. A player that I mentioned last week in terms of who's cheap at Norwich defence, Closer, did get a goal, but again, I don't think Norwich is a team whose players necessarily want to buy, just considering the double game week. Southampton, on the other hand, I'm not quite sure about them because, again, away to Leicester, and I know that there's arguments that the goal should not have stood, but I think they kind of didn't really perform to their level. Considering what they can do in the second half against Liverpool, I guess that's the benchmark, and they just didn't have that same kind of, you could call it, quality on the day, and which is why they didn't really score, and they had a few chances, but I still think they weren't convincing enough. Again, players that will look at Mane, Pella, and in terms of defense, Target, but he's a player that's risked by Koeman in the sense he's very he's rotated around, and he might not necessarily play him for the whole 60 minutes, which is required for 2 points in this game, and also the clean sheet, because he likes to change things. That's like during the end of the first half if things are not going well, and Matt Target usually is the player that he changes. So considering that, you are inheriting that risk. Newcastle, on the other hand, I think they'll be very disappointed with the result, but like I said, Mitrovic is a player that should have got from last week, and he got points, and I think Rafa Benitez will be disappointed that he didn't in fact take my advice, because had he probably started him, you just feel with the headers and the aerial threat that he was posing, that was really causing Norwich some serious problems. So that's something that I would definitely allude to. Where do I see this game going? I think Newcastle will get something here. I think either a draw, could they win? I'm not sure, but I see goals happening here. It's just a question of maybe Southampton will just really pick them off the counter and win it like that, but who knows. Swansea and Chelsea. Well, Swansea, I guess it was a good draw against Stoke, considering the fact they were pretty much 2-0 down, and for them to come back in the game and scrap that point is important, especially when you look at the table. And Gylfi Sigurdsson, you've got Palerci. Palerci seems to be, he's not quite clear. Sometimes he prefers Gomez and sometimes prefers Palerci, but Gylfi Sigurdsson, 100% the play you should look at. And I wouldn't really look at defenders. I think Chelsea in a hot scoring form, which was shown in that Villa. Fabregas all of a sudden has been put back a bit, and he's played Pedro in a much more advanced role, and obviously he changed things around with Pato. Now, Pedro is a player that I do think I like in this game, because he does have that potential of getting a lot of goals. I mean, we saw that when Chelsea versed actually Newcastle at home. So he's worth looking at. But like I will say again, this week I really want to make it very clear. I really think you guys should be getting players with double game weeks, and for that reason, I refrain. Where do I see this game going? I think Chelsea just want to do well this season and end as high as possible, but Swansea still have things to play for, so this is going to be a fiercely contested game, and you just wonder how it will go. I could see Chelsea actually win this game just because they can pick Swansea from the counter-attack. And the last 3 o'clock game is Watford-Everton. Watford, obviously, it looks like the season's over, to be honest, because they're focusing on the FA Cup, and if there's any players to look at, maybe it's Deeney, Igalo, etc. But I just think, honestly, is you probably want to refrain from any sort of Watford transfers. Everton, on the other hand, double game week this week and a double game week next week, and they've got decent fixtures in both cases. So just because of that, I think Lukaku is definitely worth a shout. His value's gone up from 8.9 to 9, considering he does have that penalty kick, probably, even though he missed it last game. The last game he took it in, which was against West Ham. I think he's worth a shout. So I would look at here, maybe even Barclays. Everton's defence, I don't think is investable, so I wouldn't look at that. And in terms of the late game, which is 5:30 game with Man City West Brom season does look like it's over as well. They drew against Sunderland, which is adds 1 point, and I guess this makes things a bit more safer in their mindset. But really, Man City have got it all to play for. Silva looks like he's injured with an ankle injury, so De Bruyne looks like he's back, and definitely worth considering. Double game week next week for Man City. Obviously, very much involved in what they do offensively. So just for that reason, De Bruyne, like a player I mentioned before last game week, who I said was a slight risk, because look, he didn't actually play 60 minutes. He played only like 57, 58, but he did get the goal. And probably if he played the 90 minutes, might have even got some bonuses and maybe more, maybe an assist or a goal furthermore. But yeah, definitely him, definitely Aguero, and that is about it. If I'm honest, I think Sterling might be worth a shout just because of the fact that he's slowly coming back, and he with Silva out, maybe he's worth looking at. But I still think there's injury concerns with Sterling, and I would pretty much stick with Aguero and De Bruyne as the two main City players to look for. West Brom, on the other hand, bonuses they go for Chester and Foster, and I think there's not really much scope in this game week, and because they don't have a double game week, I will not look at West Brom players. In terms of the Sunday games, big games, and this is a massive game between Sunderland and Leicester. It involves the bottom and the top, and Sunderland, The last time they won, I'm pretty sure, I think was against Man United, and since then they've had chances against home against West Brom. Barini had chances, and even Defoe, which you really think one of them would have taken the chances, but they haven't. And defensively, I mean, like most Sam Allardyce's teams, pretty resolute. You don't concede that much. And Van Aanholt obviously got 2 bonus, which helps. But again, I mean, the players that I mentioned are the ones that you want to consider just because they get the chances and get the bonuses. Leicester, on the other hand, they don't actually have double game weeks. Now, this is one thing to consider. Leicester have been doing very well defensively, and because I've got Morgan and Simpson, I've profited from this. And last week, Morgan actually got me 15 points, which is quite a lot. But what helped as well was the fact that Simpson got 6 points as well. Now, Leicester have kind of shown real knit and grit in terms of getting clean sheets, and for that very reason, you have to look at Leicester defenders. They're almost guaranteed clean sheets, which is rare. And they have defenders who can potentially get a goal with Huth and Morgan. So, but I honestly think, I mean, yeah, Vardy looks like he's probably going to get chances in this game just because of Sunderland's backline. But now is a time where, if you really think about it, if Leicester are not going to win the league, it will start now. It will literally start in this game, because this is a big game for Sunderland in terms of the relegation scrap. So you either stick with the Leicester players you have, and you accept that they'll consistently have that one fixture game week, or you go with the risk of maybe leaving some Leicester players behind. But defenders are probably worth keeping because of the value. So that's just something that I wanted to mention in regards to Leicester. And I think this is going to be a real tight game. I think it's tight to call because Leicester have been scrapping the results recently by the odd goal. Some people can argue, in fact, that the last few games where they've won, they've scored an offside goal. They've scored a goal which is a foul. Maybe they should be having less points than they currently are. But at the moment, they are clear. They're very much the favourites, correctly so. But this is a big game. In terms of Liverpool and Stoke, Liverpool 1-0 ahead against Spurs, and I think they'll be a bit disappointed, but it was a great goal by Harry Kane to make it 1-1. Had chances, Sturridge especially, and it's not so clear whether he's going to start with him or Origi, because Origi played against Dortmund, he scored, but Sturridge came on and also did pretty well. So just because of that alone, it's going to be interesting to see which way Klopp sways, which is a gamble as well, because Liverpool do have a double game week. The fixtures are pretty okay, and again, I think I'll probably stick with Coutinho. Got the goal, he does take shots. Firmino looks like he's about 50-50 as well, which means he's most likely not going to play. Guaranteed to play as well. For those reasons, I'll probably look at Coutinho. Stoke, on the other hand, 2-0 up, really should have cleaned the game off. Bojan came back and obviously got 3 bonus on a goal. And if you look at his value, I think it's like 4.8. So if you're looking for a cheap Stoke player and a cheap offensive player, worth a shout. But they don't have a double game next game week. So again, it makes you think maybe there are better options other than the players that Stoke currently have. And plus, Arnautovic has got injured as well. So you just wonder how much that will affect their team in terms of the performances. Last Sunday game is Spurs Man United, a big game as well. Spurs, I'm pretty sure they want to bounce back with a win. Will be disappointing against Liverpool because I thought that they had enough chances probably to win the game actually. And no doubt big hitters are Kane, Eriksen, Dele Alli. For me, those are the 3 players offensively I look at. Defensively, you've got Wimmer, 100%. But I think Man United have started to show some real good form actually. And for them to win 1-0 at home to Everton, done the job professionally. They've been winning and keeping clean sheets recently, so you just wonder how tight this game really will be. And there's no doubt Martial a big part of what they do, and there's this whole debate regarding playing him centrally or wide. But one thing for sure, he will be involved in what Man United do well offensively, and for that reason, you have to look at Martial. Again, Man United do have a double game week, and if you ask me, look, they've got a double game week where they've got 2 home games. That's pretty big. So, I mean, maybe you don't want to get a player in this game week, but I mean, it's got to be in consideration for the next game week. So, that's just something that I'll allude to. I think it's going to be a tight game. It's too tight to call. And the last game, again, now this game week is a double game week for Palace and Everton, and they also have double game weeks next week. So, I'd honestly suggest that if you're looking for if you've got a spare transfer this week, I would strongly recommend getting an Everton or a Palace player. Um, I still think the big players for Palace and Everton is Balassi and Lukaku, because both these teams have not shown enough in terms of clean sheets. Offensively, there has been some scope for both teams, and with you want to get the main striker considering the formation, and that for Palace that's Balassi, for Everton that's Lukaku. So those are my recommendations for this game week. I hope you've enjoyed watching this video, and I do strongly recommend that you do look at game week 34. These are the extra fixtures, and another point is in game week 35, in fact, you can see there are 3 fixtures been removed. So you have to kind of also be aware of which players won't be available and trying to get a full squad for this particular game week. For instance, in my team, I think I've got 5 players who can't play in this game week because they don't have a fixture. So I might have to do like 2 transfers so I can make sure I've got 11 players on the pitch essentially. So I hope you watched the video, and